Hello, Dr. Barrios. This is Vanetta Bethea, and I am about to do my theory explanation part one for my training module. The theory that I chose is structural family theory. And the reason why I chose this theory is because it was very intriguing to me, and I really enjoyed once we learned it in class, and also reading the theories and reading the journals behind this actual theory. But I'll begin with the theorist. And his name was Salvador Minuchin, and he originated this theory back in the 1960s. And during this era, he was one of the only family therapists that worked within the populations of African American men and young boys that were Puerto Rican, as well as minority population. And the reason why his theory was so profound was not only because he was working within our population, but also during that era, unemployment, discrimination, poverty were some of the issues being faced by this population. And public policies were trying to find ways to eliminate the delinquencies within these young boys. And that's where Minuchin actually began working within this population at a boys' institute in New York. And he worked there for 8 years, and he found that doing family therapy was most effective at channeling and working through some of the problems that the young men behaviors exhibited. His assumption of the family is that if the family has healthy boundaries, they have rules, good rules, and an executive authority within that family, and subsystems, then that family is deemed to be a healthy family. But if there are imbalances within these roles or within these assumptions, then the family dynamics are unhealthy. He also came up with some concepts within this family. And I will name some of those concepts, which would be the subsystem. The subsystems within the family are when could be the mother and the father, which are the parents of that family. It could be the extended family or blended family within that family. It could be the siblings within that family could be a subsystem. The subsystem could consist of cousins within that family, depending on the dynamics of that family. Also, another concept would be boundaries. What boundaries are set forth within that family? These boundaries can be internal or external, affecting the family members. Also, another concept would be subsystems. Not subsystems. It could also be the executive authority. Who makes the decisions within that family? Who holds the power within that family? Another assumption within the theory would be the rules. What rules are set forth? And according to theory profiles, it says that these rules, they could be unseen. So they may not be anything tangible, but because the individual or the family member observes family members doing certain things, then some of those unspoken rules are established. So identifying those types of rules within that family. Also, roles is another. Who holds the roles? What roles are being held within that family? And what are the responsibility of those roles in each family? The social worker or the practitioner would observe or assess these things within the dynamics of the family. And normally through these group sessions, the family is involved. Then the therapist is able to see those unspoken rules, those boundaries that aren't spoken of. And it helps the therapist see why the individual behaves the way that they do. Another concept is the triangle within the family. Here, as you see here, there's a triangle. And this triangle helps you see who holds the alliances within the family. Just because you are in a subsystem with one does not mean that you have an alliance with them. So for instance, a mother and a father within that family. They are the subsystem within that family. But that mother may hold an alliance with the child, being the person that they actually support or supports them. The individual, and those two gang up or have conflict with another family member. So they have the common interest or common goal, whereas the other family member does not. So they don't hold an alliance with them. So for another example could be that child could hold an alliance with their mother, or that child can hold an alliance with their father. In situations where executive authority has an imbalance, meaning that the child has executive authority, it throws or it disrupts the structure of that family, causing miscommunication and chaos. If boundaries are not set forth or rules not clear, it can also cause for miscommunication, which is another concept within the theory. If there's positive communication within that family, then the family is deemed to be healthy. But if there's negative communication within that family, then it distorts the family. So observing the communication and ensuring that the rules and communication are clear so that everyone has a clear understanding of their responsibilities and dynamics within that family. Within this theory, it many times is compared to family emotions theory. Many of the interventions in family emotion tend to be abstract, whereas with with structured family interventions, they tend to be action. They tend to pose action and demand on the family members to conform. This theory does not tend to be an extended or lengthy amount of time. It does show for action, the interventions. And some of those interventions that I will be discussing would be role plays as one. Role plays within this intervention, again, pose for action and pose for demand. So one would be time measurements. How much time you giving homework to the family members to write down patterns of how long that individual is spending within their room. So for instance, if one of the complaints within the family is that my child stays in their room too long, then you would, for homework, give that child, you are allowed to stay in your room for 1 hour, but you have to come out of your room every hour and spend at least 20 to 30 minutes interacting within your family. Okay? Another intervention would be role plays. During the session, you would ask the family members to enact each other, giving their own perspective of how the other individual is. So an example would be a mother enacting her perception and role-playing her perception of her husband, and the husband enacting his perception of his wife. Another would be supporting system strength. And I'm actually getting these interventions from Walsh. Supporting system strengths actually gives the therapist time to listen to some of the issues and concerns of that family in therapy, and enhancing the positive functioning and positive interactions that the individuals are having amongst each other. So pointing out the positives of how they do function together. Relabeling would be normalizing the problem. But with normalizing the problem, it gives the family a different perspective. Another intervention would be problem tracking. Tracking the behaviors between the sessions. So then the family are able to see a pattern in how they feel each time the family member does what or says what. Teaching them stress management skills is another intervention. Another intervention would be manipulating the space. So if family members are sitting between each other, you encourage them during therapy to sit closer to one another. The therapist's role during these group sessions are to be direct. They are to take charge of the session. They are an active listener, posing and demonstrating empathy with each family member, not posing sides. But again, they are deemed to be the expert. Whenever the therapist is discussing or having discussions within their session with the family members, they are to lead the family into resolution. Some of the limitations within this theory would be that it focuses too much on external things and not so much on the emotional life or the emotional thinking of that individual. Another limitation would be that it causes sometimes in some situations the practitioner to be biased into their own value system or into their own structure of how they believe a family could be structured. As time goes by, families are constructed of many different concepts and many different subsystems now. We have lesbian relationships, marital relationships, homosexual marital relationships that poses structure within the family. The therapist must be very careful in these situations not to allow their own bias or their own values to be implemented into these or persuaded into these group sessions with this family. They must be an active listener and listen and identify the rules and subsystems of the family and posing and restructuring them into appropriate order without imposing their own biased opinion. Again, this theory gives way for another concept, which is flexibility. How does the family, is there flexibility within that family? Is it rigid or is it fluid? If it's rigid, then it poses hard demands upon the family members, which may then cause for miscommunication. Or is it fluid? Is everyone able to share their own opinions? So just determining that concept. When we are moving towards termination of these group sessions, the therapist is looking for, have there been behaviors and revelations and resolution within this family? And how effective has it been within this family? If the therapist is able to see that there is resolution being made within the family and behaviors are beginning to change, then the therapist will determine when termination is coming for that group. Many times in roles can be established and rules can be established depending on the age or life cycle of the individual. So for instance, the grandmother could be the one who sets the rules within that, who may set the rules within that family. And also she would act within her role. Whatever the norms and values are within that family must be observed. And many times with Minuchin, he would meet and have therapy sessions in the family's home so he can observe and identify those roles, those boundaries, those rules in that family session. Dr. Barrios, I would like to thank you for hearing my explanation of this theory. Hopefully I've explained thoroughly what the concepts, the assumptions, the limitations, and the interventions are for this theory. Thank you.